At 10:17 on a Thursday night, Leah Morgan knocked on my door with rain in her hair, a canvas overnight bag hanging from one shoulder, and 2 paper cups balanced in her hands. She glanced past me into the living room. "Is Miles home?" "He's covering an overnight shift," I said. "He won't be back until tomorrow afternoon." Leah looked at me for one quiet second. Then she stepped closer, close enough that I caught the warm scent of cinnamon from one of the cups. "Then I'll stay." She said it without a smile, without teasing, and without giving me the protection of pretending she meant something casual. Before I could ask what had happened, she moved past me, set the cups on the dining table, and placed her bag beside the couch. She had been my next-door neighbor for 11 months. In that time, she had borrowed my ladder twice, brought soup when I had the flu, argued with me about whether our shared fence leaned toward her yard or mine, and sat on my back steps through 3 different sunsets. She had never brought an overnight bag. "Leah." "I know." She took off her damp coat and draped it over the back of a chair. "This is either brave or embarrassing. I haven't decided which. Is something wrong at your house?" "No." "Did someone bother you?" "No." "Is your brother in town?" "No, Aaron." She looked straight at me. "Nothing is wrong except that I have spent almost a year waiting for you to say something, and I'm tired of going home every night wondering whether I imagined all of it." That was the moment the room changed. The rain kept ticking against the windows. The old refrigerator still hummed. Somewhere upstairs, a pipe knocked twice inside the wall, but the ordinary sounds of the house suddenly felt far away, as if Leah and I had stepped into a smaller room inside the room, one that had no exit except honesty. She slid one of the paper cups toward me. "Hot chocolate." "You're out of coffee." "How do you know I'm out of coffee?" "You complained about it this morning while taking the trash bins to the curb." "I wasn't complaining. You said civilization was collapsing because you had to drink tea." "That was an observation." Her mouth moved at one corner. Not a full smile. Leah never wasted those. There. That. You make me laugh. You look at me like you're about to say something, and then you retreat behind another observation. I wrapped my hand around the cup because it gave me something to do. And the bag? A practical decision. For what? For staying. She held my gaze until I was the one who looked away. "My name is Aaron Hale. I was 44 that year, old enough to know silence could become a decision even when you refused to call it one. I repaired and restored guitars for a living in a narrow brick workshop near Tacoma's theater district. Most of my days were spent with cracked spruce tops, warped necks, loose braces, and instruments that had survived more careless owners than they deserved. I liked damaged things that told you exactly where they hurt. Wood split along the grain, glue failed at a seam, frets wore down under pressure. There was always a cause, and usually a method. People were less cooperative. Miles Carter, my roommate, had been my closest friend since we were 19. He worked as an emergency room nurse and kept hours that made ordinary schedules look fictional. After his marriage ended, he moved into my spare room for 3 months, which became 2 years without either of us objecting. He paid half the mortgage, cooked on Sundays, and knew when to ask questions and when to leave a man alone. Leah lived in the pale green bungalow next door. She was 41, ran the adult literacy program at a public library branch, and had the unnerving habit of listening as if nothing in the world mattered more than the sentence you had not finished yet. She had moved into her mother's old house after spending 7 years caring for her through a long illness. By the time I met her, her mother had been gone 8 months. Leah was still sorting boxes room by room, deciding what belonged to memory and what had simply remained because grief made decisions exhausting. The first conversation we ever had was about a cedar tree that fell across both our yards during a November windstorm. I came outside at dawn with a chainsaw and found her standing in rubber boots, holding an umbrella that had turned inside out. "Your tree?" she asked. "Property line says yours. The trunk starts on your side. The branches destroyed my shed. So we agree it was cooperative." That was Leah. She could turn an argument into an alliance before you noticed the transition. We cut the tree together over 2 weekends. I saved a section of the trunk because the grain was straight and the wood smelled clean even after the rain. I told her I would make a bench for the space along our shared fence. 11 months later, the boards were still stacked in my garage. Leah had never mentioned that, until that night. She looked towards the hallway that led to Miles's room, then back at me. "He really isn't coming home?" "No." "Good. Why is that good? Because every time the 3 of us have dinner, you let Miles fill every silence. Every time we sit outside, you find a reason to call him over. You use him like conversational furniture. That is not fair. It's completely fair. He knows it too." I felt heat climb into my face. "You discussed me with my roommate? I asked him whether you were always this slow." "And?" He said only when something matters. That sounded exactly like Miles, which made it worse. Leah lifted her cup and took a careful drink. Her fingers were cold and pink around the paper. For the first time, I noticed that beneath her courage, she was nervous. Not performatively nervous. Truly afraid. "What do you want me to say?" I asked. The truth would be a remarkable start. The answer came too quickly inside me and stopped at the place where old fear kept its hand on the door. "I want you here." I had wanted her there for months. I had wanted her in my kitchen on Sunday mornings, in the passenger seat on long drives, at the workbench, while I explained why an old guitar needed patience instead of force. I had wanted to hear her key in the lock of a house that belonged to both of us, though I had never allowed myself to think that far in complete sentences. But wanting and promising had become tangled for me years earlier. So I said the smaller thing. "I'm glad you came." Leah's expression softened, but not enough to let me pretend it was sufficient. "I'm glad too," she said. "But I didn't come over for gratitude." She walked to the front window. Rainwater moved down the glass in silver threads, blurring the porch light and the dark outline of her house next door. "I got a job offer," she said. The words landed with the clean sound of something breaking. "Where?" "Portland." "How long have you known?" 6 days. "And you tell me now?" "I'm telling you before I answer them. When do they need an answer?" "Monday morning." She turned from the window. "It's director of community learning for 3 counties. More funding, more staff, more reach. It's the kind of position I told myself I'd apply for after Mom died, once I was free to build a life that belonged to me again. That sounds important." "It is." "Then you should take it." The disappointment on her face was immediate, and I hated myself for putting it there. "That was fast," she said. "I mean, you shouldn't turn down something you want because of a neighbor." Her eyes sharpened. "Is that what I am? You know that isn't what I meant." "Do I?" I set down my cup. "Leah, I'm trying not to make your decision about me, and I'm trying to find out whether there is a you and me before I make it." There it was. No metaphor. No safe distance. I had repaired instruments worth more than my house. I had told famous musicians that their beloved guitars needed months of invasive work. I had stood across from grieving families who brought me instruments belonging to people who would never play them again. My hands were steady in rooms where other people's memories shook. But with Leah standing 6 feet away, waiting for one honest answer, I could barely breathe. She glanced at the canvas bag by the couch. "I didn't come here to seduce you. she said. "I brought pajamas, a toothbrush, and enough dignity to sleep on the couch if you panic. I came because I don't want to leave Tacoma without knowing whether you ever intended to open the door you keep standing behind." I should have answered then. Instead, thunder rolled somewhere over the water, deep enough to rattle the window pane. A second later, every light in the house went out. For 3 seconds, neither of us moved. Then Leah said, "That feels a little dramatic." I found the flashlight in the kitchen drawer and switched it on. The beam caught her face, and she raised one hand against the glare. "Sorry? You keep emergency supplies in the junk drawer? I keep organized supplies in a drawer Miles calls junk." "Of course you do." The power outage gave us a task, and tasks were where I knew how to breathe. I lit 2 candles, checked the breaker panel, then looked through the front window. The entire block was dark. Porch lights, street lamps, the bakery sign at the corner, everything had disappeared beneath the storm. Leah stood beside me at the glass. Her shoulder touched mine. "Transformer, probably," I said. "You say that as though transformers are comforting. They are when the alternative is wiring inside the house." A flash of lightning illuminated both yards. For one white instant, I saw the shared fence, the wet grass, and the skeletal branches of the maple behind Leah's roof. Then came a crack louder than the thunder. Leah's hand closed around my forearm. We ran outside without discussing it. Rain struck hard enough to hurt. The maple had dropped a thick limb across the rear corner of Leah's house. It had punched through the gutter, broken part of the eave, and torn loose a section of roofing above the room she used as an office. I grabbed a tarp from my garage while Leah unlocked her back door. Water was already dripping through the office ceiling onto a desk covered with folders, books, and framed photographs. For the next 40 minutes, romance became irrelevant. We moved boxes into the hall. I climbed into the attic with a flashlight between my teeth and spread the tarp beneath the leak. Leah carried plastic storage tubs up from her basement. We worked soaked, breathless, and wordlessly coordinated. When I asked for a hammer, it was already in her hand. When she pointed to a stack of files beneath a widening stain, I moved them before the plaster gave way. The ceiling did not collapse, but a wet section sagged low enough to make us back out. By midnight, the immediate damage was contained. Leah stood in the doorway of her office, hair plastered to her cheeks, sweater dark with rain. On the floor beside her sat a cardboard box with one side soaked through. She crouched and lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of envelopes tied with blue ribbon. "My mother's letters," she said. "Are they wet?" "The bottom few." We carried the box to my kitchen, where the gas stove still worked. I warmed the room with 2 burners, while Leah carefully separated the damp pages and laid them across towels on the dining table. The letters had been written by her father during the first 8 years of her parents' marriage. He had died when Leah was 16. She had read some of them as a teenager, but not since. "I almost donated this box without opening it," she said. "It was in the closet behind old tax returns. You kept it. I kept everything at first. Then I started throwing things away too fast. There didn't seem to be a correct speed." I handed her a dry towel for her hair. "There isn't." She looked at me. "You say that like you know." I did. My engagement had ended 6 years earlier, though not in the simple way people assumed when they heard the word ended. Dana and I had been together for 9 years. We met in our 20s, built the guitar shop together, and planned a wedding twice. The first time, my father had a stroke 2 months before the date. We postponed it while I helped my mother manage his rehabilitation and kept the shop alive. The second time, Dana received an offer to join a touring production in Nashville as an instrument technician. She wanted me to come. I wanted her to stay. Neither of us said those sentences honestly. We disguised them as practical concerns, temporary plans, financial calculations, and questions about timing. She left for 6 months. We tried long distance badly. By the time she returned, every phone call had become evidence in a trial neither of us admitted we were conducting. She took her half of the business and moved to Austin. For years, I told the story as though circumstances had separated us. The truth was less flattering. I had believed love should prove itself by staying close to me. Dana had believed love should prove itself by following her. We both asked for sacrifice and called it partnership. I know what it's like to keep objects because deciding feels like betrayal, I told Leah. She waited, but I did not give her the whole story yet. She turned back to the letters. One page had bled blue ink along the bottom edge. Leah touched the corner gently. My father traveled for construction work, she said. He wrote to Mom every week, even when he was tired, even when there was nothing to report. Did she save all of them? Every one. She unfolded a letter that was mostly dry and read silently. Her face changed halfway down the page. What? I asked. She hesitated, then handed it to me. The handwriting was narrow and slightly slanted. I read only the paragraph she indicated. I used to think home was the place that waited for me. Now I think it is the person whose life I want to understand, even when I cannot be there to see it. I gave the letter back. Leah sat down. My mother never talked about him after he died. Not really. I thought maybe she loved him less than I remembered. Maybe it hurt too much to translate. Maybe. The candles threw moving shadows across the walls. Without power, the house felt older, softer, removed from time. Leah's wet clothes clung to her, and I realized she was shivering. You need to change. Her eyes flicked toward the overnight bag. I suppose my practical decision was practical after all. I showed her the bathroom and found a clean sweatshirt and sweatpants she could wear. When she came back, the sleeves covered most of her hands, and the pants were rolled at the ankles. Something about seeing her in my clothes removed the last illusion that this was an ordinary visit. She sat on the rug near the fireplace while I built a small fire. Miles and I rarely used it, but the chimney had been inspected that fall. You're good in emergencies, she said. Objects and emergencies. Not people. People rarely come with visible instructions. I have been remarkably visible. I sat across from her. I know. Do you? Yes. Then tell me what you see. The fire caught. Light moved over her face, warm against the darkness behind her. I could have named the easy things. Brown eyes, a small scar near her chin from a bicycle accident, the way she tucked her hair behind one ear when reading. But she was not asking to be described. She was asking whether she had reached me. I see someone who spent years being necessary to everyone else, I said. And now that no one is asking, you don't know whether choosing yourself will feel like freedom or selfishness. Her expression went still. I continued before fear could stop me. I see someone who knows the name of every grocery clerk on our block. Someone who leaves library books in the little free box at the bus stop, even though it isn't her job. Someone who pretends she doesn't care that the cedar bench isn't finished, but checks the boards every time my garage door is open. She laughed once, quietly. I knew you noticed. I notice everything about you. The words hung between us. Leah lowered her eyes to the fire. That is almost worse. Why? Because if you notice, then your silence has been a choice. She was right, and there was no decent defense. I was afraid, I said. Of me, of asking you to stay, because of Portland, because of before. I told her about Dana. Not the edited version I gave acquaintances. I told her how I had treated my father's illness as proof that leaving was disloyal, how Dana had stopped asking what I wanted because every answer sounded like an accusation, how I had let a woman I loved walk out believing my stillness meant certainty when it really meant fear. When she left, I promised myself I would never ask someone to shrink her life for mine again, I said. Leah drew her knees toward her chest. So you solved that by never asking anyone for anything. Yes, that isn't noble, Aaron. I know. It gives you all the safety and makes the other person carry all the risk. I know. Her eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. I came here tonight because I needed to know whether Portland was an opportunity I wanted or an escape from waiting for you. I thought if you told me you wanted this, really wanted it, I could at least make the decision with the truth in the room. And if I ask you to stay, then I decide. You don't decide for me. The simplicity of that exposed every excuse I had used. I moved from the chair to the rug, leaving several feet between us. I don't want you to go, I said. Leah closed her eyes. The relief on her face lasted only a moment. Then she looked at me again. That is not the same as wanting a life with me. No. Do you? I thought of her house next door, the back steps, the unfinished cedar boards, the hot chocolate cooling on the table. I thought of every time I had walked outside because I heard her gate and pretended I happened to be checking the weather. Yes, I said. I do. Her breath left slowly. Say it without sounding like a man agreeing to a repair estimate. Despite everything, I laughed. So did she. Then I moved closer. I gave her time to stop me. She did not. Our first kiss was not urgent. It was careful, almost questioning, and it lasted long enough for caution to become recognition. Her hand came to the side of my face. Mine settled at her waist. When we separated, her forehead rested against mine. You took 11 months, she whispered. I wanted to be thorough. That is a terrible answer, I know. She kissed me again anyway. Later, I made grilled cheese sandwiches by candlelight. We ate them on the floor in front of the fire, while rain battered the roof. We talked until after 2 in the morning, about Portland, about the literacy program, about my shop, about what neither of us wanted to promise too quickly. When the fire burned low, I made up the couch for her. Leah stood beside it, holding the blanket. You really are putting me on the couch. You said you brought enough dignity for it. I may have overpacked. I looked toward my bedroom, then back at her. Desire was not the problem. The problem was that I wanted the night to mean more than fear of losing her. I don't want our first honest conversation to become something we use to avoid the second one, I said. She studied me, then nodded. That, she said, was the right answer. I slept badly in my room, aware of every floorboard sound from the living room. At 4:14, I heard her walking toward the kitchen. I found her standing over the table, reading one of her father's letters by candlelight. Couldn't sleep? I asked. She shook her head. I came beside her. The letter in her hand was dated 3 months before her father died. He was offered a permanent job in Spokane, she said. Mom didn't want to leave Tacoma. He turned it down. Did he regret it? I don't know. She touched the page. He wrote that staying is only love when both people are allowed to choose it. The sentence settled between us with more weight than either of us wanted. Leah folded the letter carefully. I won't reject Portland because you finally kissed me, she said. I wouldn't ask you to, and I won't accept it just to prove I'm not afraid. Good. She looked at me. So what happens now? We use the next 3 days. To do what? To find out whether this can survive daylight. Daylight arrived with no electricity and no mercy. The rain stopped shortly before 7. Gray morning filled the windows, revealing wet towels, candle wax, Leah's letters spread across my dining table, and 2 people who had said more in one night than they had managed in nearly a year. Leah stood in my kitchen, wearing my sweatshirt and holding a mug of tea heated over the gas burner. "This is the part where one of us becomes awkward," she said. I was under the impression I had already handled that role. "You have been outstanding." I stepped close enough to kiss her, then paused. She noticed. "You're asking permission now?" "I'm learning." Her smile came slowly. Permission granted. The kiss was different in the morning, less fragile, more certain. At 8, Miles came through the front door in navy scrubs, took 3 steps, and stopped. His eyes moved from Leah in my clothes, to the letters on the table, to the blankets on the couch, and finally to me. "I can explain," I said. "I would pay money to prevent that." Leah laughed into her mug. Miles removed his rain jacket. "Power is out at the hospital parking garage, too. Half the city looks like it lost a fight with the weather." He nodded toward Leah's house through the window. "That branch yours?" "Unfortunately," she said. "You staying here?" She looked at me before she answered. "For now." Miles held up both hands. "I support whatever happened while also wanting no details." He disappeared down the hall, and Leah watched him go. "He really does make everything easier," she said. "That is why I keep him." From behind his bedroom door, Miles called. I heard that. The next 2 days were not romantic in the way stories usually make weekends romantic. We did not spend them walking beside the water or drinking wine under soft lights. We called roofers, photographed storm damage, moved damp boxes, rented a dehumidifier, and waited on hold with Leah's insurance company. But there was an intimacy in practical work that I trusted more than declarations. Leah labeled every rescued box with a black marker. I measured the damaged eave and cut temporary plywood. Miles borrowed a generator from a coworker and ran extension cords across the yard. At lunch, the 3 of us ate takeout soup from paper containers while sitting on overturned storage tubs in Leah's hallway. Saturday afternoon, Leah's brother Colin arrived from Olympia. He was 4 years older than she was, broad-shouldered, neatly dressed, and carrying the restless energy of a man who believed problems improved when he took command of them. He hugged Leah, inspected the office, questioned my temporary repair, and called 3 contractors within 20 minutes. Then he noticed the overnight bag sitting near her front door. His gaze moved between us. "You stayed next door?" "My ceiling was leaking," Leah said. Colin looked at the dry guest room. Leah crossed her arms. "Do not." I didn't say anything. "You have an entire speech in your eyebrows." He turned to me. "Aaron, right? We've met twice, I remember." The words were polite. His tone was not hostile exactly, but protective in a way that treated me as a variable requiring evaluation. Leah went upstairs to take a call from the insurance adjuster. The moment she was out of hearing, Colin lowered his voice. "She told you about Portland?" "Yes." "And?" "And it's her decision. He studied me." "That sounds reasonable. It is reasonable. It also sounds like something a man says when he wants the benefits of being important without accepting responsibility for the effect he has." I felt my jaw tighten. "You don't know me?" "No, I know my sister. She gave up 7 years because our mother refused outside help, and because I lived 2 hours away and convinced myself sending money counted as sharing the burden." The admission took some of the force out of my anger. Colin looked toward the stairs. Leah stayed because someone needed her. She is very good at becoming indispensable. People love that about her until she realizes no one ever asked what it cost. I'm not asking her to give up Portland. Maybe not. But are you offering anything that makes staying a choice instead of another duty? Before I could answer, Leah came back downstairs. Colin changed the subject immediately, but his question followed me for the rest of the day. That evening, after the power returned, Leah and I sat on her back steps. The storm had washed the air clean. The cedar boards were visible inside my open garage across the narrow strip of lawn. You told him, I said. Colin? About me. I told him there was a man next door who could repair a guitar from 1936, but could not recognize flirting unless it arrived with legal documentation. That seems unfairly specific. It was an emotionally difficult year. I rubbed my hands together. He thinks I'm keeping you here without offering anything. He thinks guilt is contagious because he has plenty of his own. Is he wrong about me? Leah looked out at the wet yard. I don't know yet. Honest answers hurt differently from cruel ones. Cruelty creates resistance. Honesty enters without opposition. What would an offer look like? I asked. I don't need a proposal, Aaron. I know. I don't need you to sell your shop tomorrow or swear you'll follow me anywhere. Then what? I need movement. She turned toward me. You have built a life that is comfortable because every important part of it is fixed. Your shop is 12 minutes away. Miles is in the spare room. Your tools are where you left them. I am next door, close enough to love and far enough that you never had to risk changing anything. That isn't why I care about you. I know. But it may be why caring about me has felt safe. I had no immediate answer. Leah rested her elbows on her knees. The Portland job scares me. It would mean leading 60 people instead of 12. It would mean selling this house or renting it out. It would mean admitting that Mom is gone and I don't have to organize my life around being available for an emergency that will never happen again. You don't have to prove you're free by leaving. And I don't have to prove I love you by staying. No. She looked at me, tired and beautiful, and unwilling to accept half a truth. What are you afraid will happen if you move toward me? She asked. The answer was not Dana. Not really. I'm afraid I'll become someone who asks you to choose me and then resents everything your choice changes. Leah's voice softened. That is at least an honest fear. What are you afraid of? That I'll choose you because being loved feels like relief, and 5 years from now I'll wake up angry that I built another life around someone else's needs. We sat with that. Then she reached for my hand. Neither of us promised anything. For the next 2 weeks, we tried daylight. Leah returned to her own house after the roof was sealed, but she came over most evenings. Sometimes she stayed. Sometimes she did not. We ate breakfast at the bakery on Sundays and stopped pretending coincidence had placed us at the same outdoor table. She visited my workshop for the first time on a Tuesday afternoon. The shop occupied the ground floor of an old brick building between a tailor and a theater costume warehouse. The front room displayed 6 restored guitars, though most of my work happened behind a glass partition where humidity stayed controlled. Leah walked slowly past the benches and clamps. It smells like your garage, she said. Wood, glue, and poor financial decisions. She stopped at a small parlor guitar on my bench. The top was cracked from bridge to tail block. Can you save it? Yes. How do you know? Because the crack is clean, the braces are intact, and the owner brought all the pieces. She looked at me. You enjoy making statements that sound like metaphors, and then pretending they aren't. I have been told. My business partner, June Park, came out of the office carrying a folder. June was 58, direct, and unimpressed by any form of emotional concealment. She shook Leah's hand and said, "So you're the neighbor." I stared at her. "How does everyone know?" Miles talks. Leah glanced at me. "Conversational furniture." June handed me the folder. The Rose City Arts Cooperative called again. I knew immediately what it contained. 6 months earlier, the cooperative in Portland had asked whether I would design and lead a training program for young instrument repair apprentices. It was a 1-year contract, renewable, with workshop space provided. I had declined before they sent formal terms. "They increased the budget," June said, "and they're willing to let Hale and Park keep outside clients through the shop." Leah went very still. "You never told me Portland wanted you too," she said. "It was before your offer." "That isn't an answer." June looked between us, recognized danger, and retreated to the office with rare wisdom. I set the folder on the bench. I said no months ago. "Why?" "The shop is here. June is here." "Yes." "And she would still be here if you taught in Portland? It would change how we operate." Leah's eyes stayed on me. Movement. I disliked hearing my own argument returned to me because it fit too well. "The program is temporary," I said. "So is every first step." I didn't want the travel, didn't want it, or were afraid of what it would disturb. I turned away and adjusted a clamp that did not need adjusting. Leah understood the gesture. "I'm not asking you to accept it for me," she said, "but I need you to notice that you rejected a door before you even looked through it." After she left, June came back into the workroom. "You're an idiot," she said. "You have no context. I have watched you spend 12 years behaving as though consistency and fear are the same virtue. That is not business advice. No. Business advice is that the contract would pay enough for me to hire another technician, you would bring new apprentices into the trade, and we would gain clients in Oregon. Personal advice is free because you clearly wouldn't pay for it." I opened the folder. The proposal was better than I remembered. 2 days a week in Portland, 3 in Tacoma for the first 6 months. Housing allowance, travel reimbursement, authority to design the curriculum. No demand that I close the shop. I had imagined disruption and refused an opportunity that had already accounted for it. That night, I called Leah. "I'm reading the Portland proposal." There was a pause. "Because of me? Because I should have read it the first time?" That is a careful answer. "It is also true. What are you going to do?" "Talk to June. Visit the cooperative. Find out whether the job is real or just flattering paper." "Good." She did not sound relieved. She sounded cautious, which I had earned. On Friday, Miles announced he was moving out. He told me over breakfast, spreading apartment listings across the table while I stood with the coffee pot in my hand. "I found a place near the hospital," he said. "Studio? 3rd floor, terrible kitchen, walking distance. When? End of next month." I put the pot down too hard. "You signed a lease?" "Yesterday. You didn't think to mention you were looking?" "I mentioned it 3 times. You said you were thinking about having your own place. That is usually the stage before looking." I stared at the listings. The anger came faster than reason. "So everyone has already decided to leave." Miles leaned back. There are moments when a friend sees the wound beneath the sentence before you do. His face changed, not with pity but recognition. "This isn't about rent," he said. "I didn't say it was. It isn't about me either." I walked to the sink. "You can move wherever you want." "Yes, I can. And you can be upset without making it abandonment." The word hit exactly where he intended. "I let you live here when you had nowhere to go," I said. "And I will be grateful for the rest of my life. But I am not supposed to remain broken, so you can remain necessary." I turned around, Miles stood, his voice calm. "You helped me survive the worst year I've had. You gave me a room, a routine, and a place where nobody expected me to explain why my marriage failed. But I'm better now." That was the point, wasn't it? Of course it was. The fact that I could not answer showed me something about myself I did not want to see. Miles picked up his jacket. "For what it's worth, Leah is not Dana. And I am not your father. Nobody is asking you to freeze your life to prove you care." He left for work. I spent the morning alone in the house, walking through rooms that had not changed and suddenly looked temporary. At noon, Leah came through the back gate carrying paint samples for her repaired office. She found me in the garage beside the cedar boards. "Miles is moving," I said. "I know. He told you?" "He asked whether I knew a good moving company." "Of course he did." She set down the samples. "Are you angry?" I was. "And now?" "Now I'm trying to decide why." Leah touched one of the cedar boards. "You don't like being left. That conclusion appears to have a disturbing amount of evidence." She smiled faintly. I looked at her. "Stay tonight." The words came from fear before I could examine them. Leah heard it. Her hand left the board. "Because you want me?" she asked. "Or because Miles is leaving?" "Both can be true." "Yes. But one of them will poison the other if we pretend they are the same." "I'm not pretending. You are asking me to fill a room before it is even empty. That isn't fair." Her face tightened. "You said that the first night, too. I knew immediately I had chosen the wrong defense." Leah stepped back. "I love being with you, Aaron. I think I may have loved you before you ever kissed me. But I will not become proof that nobody leaves. That isn't what you are. Then don't reach for me only when someone else moves away." She walked back through the gate. I did not follow her, because following in that moment would have been another attempt to stop departure, instead of understanding it. But for the first time, since she had stepped into my house and said she would stay, I watched Leah close her own door behind her. The next morning, I carried the cedar boards into the workshop. I had promised Leah a bench 11 months earlier, and delayed it for the same reason I delayed everything that might become meaningful. Unfinished things could not disappoint anyone yet. I worked for 10 hours. I jointed the boards, cut the mortises, fitted the legs, and shaped the back rail by hand. The cedar released its sharp, clean scent with every pass of the plane. By evening, the bench stood assembled but unfinished beneath the shop lights. June found me sanding one armrest. "Grand gesture?" she asked. "No." "Good. Grand gestures are usually panic wearing a nice coat. I'm finishing something I said I would finish. That is better." On Monday, Leah accepted the Portland job. She told me herself. We stood beside the shared fence while a contractor replaced the last section of gutter on her house. She wore a blue coat and held the official offer letter folded inside her hand. "I start in 6 weeks," she said. I felt the loss before it had happened. "Congratulations. Thank you. Do you want me to say I'm happy?" "I want you to say what is true." "I'm proud of you. I'm afraid. And I understand why you said yes." Her eyes filled, though she did not look away. "That is true," she said. "I'm going to Portland on Thursday to meet the Arts Cooperative." Her expression changed. "You decided?" "I decided to find out what the choice actually is. That matters. It isn't a promise about us, I know. It is movement." Yes, for the next 3 weeks, we gave each other space without pretending the feeling between us had vanished. I visited Portland, toured the cooperative, met the apprentices, and asked questions I should have asked months earlier. June and I worked through schedules, insurance, client transfers, and the cost of hiring another technician. The arrangement was possible. More than possible. It excited me. That realization embarrassed me because I had nearly rejected the opportunity without discovering I wanted it. Meanwhile, Leah prepared to leave. She listed her house for rent rather than sale. She trained her replacement at the library. Colin came down on weekends to help pack. Miles moved into his studio and sent me photographs of a kitchen so narrow he could open the oven only if the refrigerator door was closed. The house became quiet. I let it. I did not ask Leah to fill it. Instead, I learned what the silence contained when I stopped treating it as evidence that I had been abandoned. It contained my own footsteps, my own choices, and room for a future that did not have to resemble the past. 3 nights before Leah's move, I carried the finished cedar bench into the space along our shared fence. She came outside when she heard me setting it down. The wood had been oiled until the grain glowed amber beneath the porch light. I had carved no initials, no date, no message into it. I wanted it to be useful before it was symbolic. Leah ran her fingers across the back rail. You finished it. I should have finished it months ago. Why didn't you? Because I thought promises only became dangerous when they were broken. I didn't understand they also become dangerous when you keep postponing them. She sat on the bench. I sat beside her, leaving enough space that she could choose whether to close it. I accepted the cooperative contract, I said. Her head turned toward me. 2 days a week at first. Then 3. June is hiring another technician. I'm keeping the Tacoma shop, but I'm helping build the Portland program. Aaron, I didn't accept it to chase you. Her face tightened slightly. I accepted it because I want the work, I continued. And because meeting you made me realize how many choices I had been calling contentment when they were really fear. She looked down at her hands. I need you to know something else. I'm not asking you to stay in Tacoma. The night air moved softly through the hedge. I'm asking whether I can go forward with you. Slowly, honestly, with 2 jobs and 2 cities, and no one pretending it will be easy. Leah looked at me for a long time. What happens when the travel gets exhausting? We talk before resentment learns our voices. What happens if one of us wants a different life in a year? We tell the truth before we build a case. What happens when you feel someone leaving? I ask myself whether they are leaving me or simply moving. Then I ask them instead of deciding alone. Her mouth trembled into a smile. That sounded rehearsed. I had a long drive home from Portland. She moved closer until our shoulders touched. I don't want a man who follows me because he is afraid to lose me, she said. I know. I want a man who can choose his own life and still make room for mine. I'm trying to become him. Leah rested her head against my shoulder. You already stepped through the door, she said. You just keep looking back to make sure it's still open. I turned and kissed her. This time, the kiss held no deadline, no storm, and no empty room waiting to be filled. It was not a request that she stay, or a promise that nothing would change. It was 2 people agreeing to move. For the first 6 months, we divided our lives between Tacoma and Portland. Leah rented a small apartment near the river. I kept the house and spent Tuesday and Wednesday nights in Portland for the apprenticeship program. Some weeks we were exhausted. Once, we argued for 40 minutes about groceries and discovered neither of us was angry about groceries. Another time, I missed an important dinner with her new board because a client arrived late with a damaged guitar. I apologized without explaining my intentions, as though intentions erased impact. Leah came to Tacoma on weekends when she could. We sat on the cedar bench with coffee and watched tenants move into her bungalow. A retired teacher named Evelyn rented the house and planted tomatoes along the fence. Miles visited often, usually carrying hospital gossip and complaining about his tiny oven. A year after that stormy night, Leah's organization offered her a permanent contract. The Arts Cooperative offered to expand mine. June proposed opening a small Portland branch under our company name. This time, I did not reject the idea before reading it. Leah and I rented a house together in Portland with a detached garage large enough for a workbench. I sold the Tacoma bungalow to Evelyn, who promised to keep the cedar bench exactly where it stood. On our final night before the move, Miles helped us pack the last boxes. Around 11, he drove away with a lamp sticking out of his back seat and strict instructions not to return before morning. Leah and I stood in the empty living room where she had once placed an overnight bag beside the couch. "The house looks smaller," she said. "Rooms do that when the future leaves first." She glanced toward the driveway. "Your roommate is away tonight. He hasn't been my roommate for a year." Details. She stepped closer, her hands settling against my chest in the same place they had on that first night. "Then I'll stay," she said. I smiled. "In an empty house? For tonight? And tomorrow?" She looked around at the bare walls, then back at me. "Tomorrow, I'll go with you." That was the difference I had needed to learn. Love was not the person who never left a room. It was not the house that remained unchanged, or the life that required no adjustment. Love was someone free to go, who kept choosing the road beside you, and the courage to keep choosing your own road honestly enough that the two could meet. Leah stayed that night. In the morning, we carried the last box to the car, closed the door behind us, and left together. Has someone ever offered to stay when what you truly needed was the courage to move forward with them? Tell me in the comments whether love, in your life, has meant staying, leaving, or learning how to do both without losing each other.